Welcome back to the Amazing Grace Bible Study. I have been gone, as some of you may have noticed, and I want to share with you a testimony about where I've been. Been out for about a week. We had teaching that was dropped in to you all on Monday, and then didn't share anything with you all on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Typically, our teachings drop in Monday through Thursday. But last week, you just got a teaching that dropped in on Monday. I want to share with you all today a personal testimony and also a passage of scripture that goes along with the testimony and where I was last week. I want to share with you this teaching today. I will lift up mine eyes. Thanks for joining the Amazing Grace Bible Study today. So, a week ago this past Friday, my brother contacts me and he says that he has some extra air miles and that he would like to go see my sister in Maine. Now, we live in Indiana. 3 of the siblings, there's 4 of us children, and 3 of us live in Indiana, and we have a sister that lives in Maine. And she was off for a couple of weeks, so she's in transition to move, and she has a job change going on. And so my brother had some extra air miles. He says, I can get you a free ticket and we can fly to Maine. Are you able to get away? Well, my schedule is flexible, although I am extremely busy. My schedule is somewhat flexible, and my family is very willing to help me out with my very busy schedule, and they did do that. And even though my siblings are all very busy and they have full-time schedules as well, we all 4 were able to be together for several days in Maine, visiting my sister and see what were her favorite things and what she'd been doing and where she'd been living for the last 4 years. And so that was just a really amazing blessing. But the unique part, and the part I want to share with you all in testimony, is this. Just before, possibly even that very day that my brother contacted me, one of the things that I do in worship with the Lord is I like to turn on a YouTube video. Turn on a YouTube video that shows scenery and then has maybe some inspirational verses that come up and also has maybe some music playing. That's something that I like to do as part of my worship time. That's my worship time. I also have time that I study the Word. I spend hours, as a matter of fact, every day in studying the Word. I'm in the Word studying. I'm doing research. I listen to teaching and preaching. That's something that I do every day because that is something that I feel called to do because I do look to continue to teach. I teach many Bible studies throughout the month, many. Not just these that I share with you on YouTube. I do live teachings on Facebook as well, and then I go into a local prison and share Bible studies, and then I do Bible studies with local women's groups. And so it is definitely something that I'm very active in doing. And so I need to be active in studying the Word. So I spend a lot of time daily in studying the Word. But part of my worship time and going to the throne and just spending time with the Father is just meditation and praise and talking to Him and asking Him for things and just worship. And in that time of worship, it's often, a YouTube video that I'll turn on that has His glory. It is scenes of nature that I'll turn on, and it'll have some hymns or some other type of soft music playing, and then it'll have these different verses that it will occasionally pop up, and then it gives me some verses to meditate on, and often there will be maybe one specific verse that just really just hits me, and just something that really that I just meditate on. And that's my worship time. I do this very regularly. And very possibly the day that my brother contacted me, I know it was in that week, I was watching one of these videos and I was just spending my worship time with the Lord, and I saw this scene come on. Fall is my favorite time of the year. And I saw this coastal scene with these rocks and these deciduous trees, you know, with all the fall foliage, this beautiful fall foliage. And I hadn't had a vacation in a while, and I just said, oh Lord, I would love to have a vacation. I would love to see a scene like that. And to me, I'm thinking it's going to be just, you know, months and years away before I see something like that. I had no idea I was days away from seeing that exact scene in person in Maine. I don't even know that picture that I had seen in that video wasn't in Maine. It was just a beautiful scene, and I ended up being able to take in sights for several days, just exactly like what I had asked the Lord for when I was in that moment in that time of worship with Him. So I'm in that time of worship, but in that time of worship, in that video that day, there came this verse. Psalm 121 verse 1 says this, I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. You know, the psalmist David says this. He says that he would lift up his eyes unto the hills. Now, why was he saying to the hills? It's because he was speaking about the holy city, the holy mountain of God, where the presence of God dwelled. There in the temple of Jerusalem, that was where the presence of God would dwell, in that holy city. And he said he would lift up his eyes there to the Lord. He says, I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. David knew where his help would come from. And that day when I was watching that video and I saw those coastal scenes, and I saw those deciduous trees, those fall leaves, and it was just so beautiful. And I thought, oh Lord, I could really use a vacation, and that just looks so beautiful. I would love to see something like that one day. It required the Lord's help to get me there, and I had no idea it was going to be within days. And my brother contacted me possibly that very day, later that very day. I don't know that it wasn't that day. But he contacted me. He said he had these air miles. He said, could you get away for a few days? I can get you a free ticket. And then we were able to stay with my sister. And so the cost of the trip was extremely minimal to take. It was just an amazing time. And to be able to be with my siblings in that way. We had not all four been together in decades in that way. Of all four just like going to sleep and waking up together. We even had to share a bathroom together. It was just really an awesome time. We really enjoyed ourselves. But what happened is I didn't even remember that verse and meditating on that verse. And then the day that I returned from the trip, it was very late. It was that Friday, because we had traveled from Tuesday through Friday. We returned late Friday night. And the next morning, my usual routine, I can't wait to spend time with the Father. And I get up and I grab my Bible and I come out into my living room where I am even now. And my TV that you see over here, I go to turn on the YouTube video, and I let the algorithm just pick out a video for me that day. And I turn it on and it starts to play, and a verse pops up. And the verse says this, my help cometh from the Lord who made heaven and earth. And then I realized It's the very next verse. And this other video, it was just amazing to make that relationship. It's the very next verse in Psalm 121. And right then when I make that connection, because I had memorized these verses when I was a child, I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. And when I began just meditating on that and I make that connection, the Lord spoke to my heart. He says, Heather, I remembered you. And then you remembered me. And it was like the Lord was just saying, we're in this relationship together. And He doesn't only care about my needs. He cares about, friends, even our wants and our desires too. And I just worshiped the Lord and I just gloried in Him as I do every morning, throughout the day when I think of Him. But this one particular morning when I make this connection, the day after I returned from my trip, and this past Saturday, I started thinking about all the rocks on that shore. And the Lord knows that I love hearts. He knows that I love heart-shaped rocks. I will drop a picture, as a matter of fact, at the end of this video of this teeny tiny heart-shaped rock that I found within minutes of being on that shore in Maine. Literally, you all, at the tiniest little heart-shaped rock. And it's perfectly shaped. And there's a picture of a sea glass that we also found because we were searching for sea glass as well. That was how I found it, because I was searching for sea glass. But the first piece of anything I found was not sea glass. The first piece that I had found of anything was this tiny heart-shaped rock that I will never forget. The Lord knows I love hearts, and there's different heart. He just knows. He knows I love hearts. And I'll drop the picture at the end of the video so you all can see it. But the Lord knew that. And as I was worshiping the Lord and I was watching, this inspirational YouTube video, when I make this connection in Psalm 121, my help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. I started thinking about all those rocks, all those countless rocks, countless stones made of different materials, and how the Lord knows each one and what they're made of, and their density, and how much they weigh, and their shapes, and how they change. And not just on that coastline, of all the coastlines across the entire globe, and of every creek bank, of every river, of every shoreline, and every bed of every stream. He knows every stone. He knows when they'll turn and if they'll turn. He knows what day they'll move. He knows how they'll move. He knows what they're going to look like this week, next month, next year. He knows when the waters will move them and how the waters will move them, and how much water it would take to move them. And He knew that one little tiny heart-shaped stone that I would find on that day. Friends, you could probably spend a lifetime and not find a perfect heart-shaped rock like I had found that day within minutes of being on that shore. You could probably spend a lifetime and not find one this perfect. But God knew. He knew because He created it. And He knew when He created it that I would find it that day, and it would be in that shape for me on that day, at that hour, at that moment. and that I would walk in those steps and land right there where it would be. See, he caused it to be there at that time. He knew who I would be with, and he knew how he would get me there. Because he is the Almighty, and he is good. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. You know, the day that I found that heart-shaped rock and we were looking for the sea glass there in Maine, we were looking for little treasures, little hidden treasures, the sea glass there on those shores. And my sister at her place, she has 4 years worth of sea glass. But you know, that one little heart-shaped rock was a great treasure to me, a great treasure. And as I was studying and preparing for today's teaching, to share my personal testimony with you, friends, the Lord brought me over to Psalm 119 here in verse 162. Says this, I rejoice at thy word as one that findeth great spoil, as one that findeth great treasure. You know, every time we go to the Word of God, there's always another little hidden gem, another little facet, another little piece that we can find about our Father. Another perspective that we can see and learn about him and grow in him. And it's a beautiful nugget. It's a hidden treasure. It's like, I didn't know that. And you know, I want it to always be that way for me. I want it, when I go to his word, to always be like finding that tiny little heart-shaped rock among all of the countless stones on that beach. Oh, I hope and I desire in my heart, I hope that it's always, I hope I always feel like that I do. Every time I go to his word, I hope that I desire it like a hidden treasure. Just like David the psalmist, when he could speak this, and it was the truth about his heart in Psalm 119, 162, when he says, I rejoice at thy word as one that findeth great spoil. My sister in her house has great spoil. She has a ton of sea glass because she spends nearly every weekend looking for sea glass. She loves it. She has sea glass all over her place and different little glass jars and glass fixtures. She's found a lot of sea glass. It's her treasure there. It is unique. She has spent a lot of time, and as she has spent that time searching for that sea glass, she has spent time speaking and talking with the Lord on his beach. Those were his treasures, his glass that she found. Isn't it unique, friends? What he'll do for his people. What he does for us. How he goes above and beyond our needs, and he even satisfies our longings and our wants. Who would have thought that day, that week, that within days, that what I was viewing on a YouTube video and longing to see it one day in person, that within just hours really, that I would be standing and looking at it with my very eyes, and that the first time that I would step foot on those shores, within minutes of being on those shores and within moments of beginning to search them for sea glass, God would have that tiny little heart-shaped rock for me, reminding me again of the detail of His design, of His majesty, of His love, of His devotion for His people, of His goodness, of His faithfulness, of His long suffering to us. He is good. So, lift up your eyes. Whatever the reason, maybe you need a vacation. Maybe you just need some other type of help. Maybe it's not a vacation. Maybe it's a new outfit. Maybe it's a day to go shopping. Maybe it's some time with your siblings. Maybe it's some time with someone else. God knows the desires of your heart. Spend some time worshiping the King and see if He doesn't come through to satisfy your desires as well. What a great God that we serve. He is faithful. He is good. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. Don't forget it. Thank you for joining today. Now, check out my picture of the sea glass and that teeny tiny little heart-shaped rock.